Rookie minicamp is over. 3 days, shorts and t-shirts, no pads, limited contact. And I know what you're thinking. What can you really learn from that? More than you'd expect, actually, when you've been waiting this long for a franchise to feel like it's genuinely building towards something real. Even not just about arm strength or footwork, but about character. About who these players are when the lights go on for the first time and the evaluation clock is running. I've been talking to sources, pulling together reports, and sitting with everything that came out of those 3 days. What I found was genuinely encouraging, and in a few cases, genuinely surprising. Let me walk you through the biggest winners from Raiders rookie minicamp on both sides of the ball, because some of these names are going to catch you off guard. Let me start with the offensive side, and I want to work through this in a way that builds toward the most important story rather than makes the picture fuller and more meaningful. The first name I want to highlight is Henning, the converted offensive lineman who showed up to this minicamp without a contract. No guaranteed money, no organizational commitment, just a 3-day audition in front of the coaching staff. That's the specific kind of situation that reveals exactly who a player is, because there's no safety net. You perform or you go home. Henning performed. He did enough across those 3 days to earn himself a deal with the Las Vegas Raiders. And in a league where hundreds of tryout invitations get extended every offseason and the overwhelming majority of players walk away with nothing, that outcome alone puts him on this list without any additional argument required. The football context around Henning is worth understanding clearly. He's a converted tackle. Started his athletic career as a tight end and H-back before transitioning to the offensive line, which gives him a physical versatility and movement quality that pure linemen often lack. He was the second overall pick in the CFL draft, which the Toronto Argonauts held. The Raiders went out and signed him before he played a single professional snap in that league, which tells you they saw something in the evaluation that made them want to act before another organization had the chance to develop it. At 6'6", with the kind of athleticism that allows him to function across multiple line positions, he's a genuine developmental piece. Not ready to contribute in September. Not someone anyone should expect to be starting in Week 1. But the offensive tackle depth in Las Vegas is thin enough that a raw, athletic prospect with the right developmental foundation and a coaching staff capable of accelerating his growth has a real pathway to meaningful contribution. He earned his contract. That matters. The next name is Trey Zoom, and the reason Zoom makes this list goes beyond anything that happened during official practice hours. The story I keep coming back to from this minicamp period, the one that tells you the most about the culture being built inside that facility, is what was happening in the hotel. Fernando Mendoza, fresh off being selected first overall in the entire NFL draft, was getting 25 to 50 extra center quarterback exchange reps in the hotel room after practice ended each day. Nobody required him to do this. No coach scheduled it. He identified a specific mechanical adaptation, taking snaps under center, something he did on approximately 5% of his college snaps, and decided that the official practice schedule wasn't providing enough repetitions to build the comfort level he needed fast enough. So he arranged extra work on his own time. And the player doing those reps with him was Trey Zoom, the rookie third-round lineman who showed up to minicamp and immediately made himself available to the franchise quarterback whenever Mendoza needed him. That availability is not a minor detail. That is a rookie who understood instinctively that being the guy the quarterback can count on, not just during scheduled work but whenever the quarterback is ready to put in time, is one of the most valuable things a young lineman can establish in his earliest professional days. Coaches are already talking about Zoom's mental flexibility and his ability to function across center, guard, and tackle. That positional versatility makes him a serious candidate for the 6th offensive lineman spot, and given how important it is to have someone who can step in at multiple positions when injuries hit during a long season, that value is genuine and durable. Roman Haye is the running back story from this minicamp that I was most invested in personally, because I've been advocating for this player since before the draft. UDFA out of Maryland, not drafted on day 3, available for nothing, and I believed he was worth having in this building for a reason. The feedback I got from sources after minicamp confirmed exactly what I believed about him. He was described as significantly more physical than coaches and players expected. And I want to be clear about what significantly more physical means in this context. It doesn't just mean he ran hard in the open field. It means he showed up in pass protection, understanding his assignments, being in the right spot before the play happened, communicating his responsibilities in the protection scheme rather than waiting to be corrected after the fact. That's the mental side of the running back position. And for a player without a guaranteed roster spot trying to earn his way onto a 53-man roster, being a reliable pass protector is the difference between making the team and going home. In Kubiak's system, where the run game and play action work in concert, where the running back carries real responsibility and protection, that skill set has genuine competitive value. Haye isn't going to outspeed Ashton Jeanty. He's not going to outpower Mike Washington. What he can be is the most reliable third down back on this team, the guy who stays on the field in obvious passing situations without the quarterback having to worry about a protection breakdown developing behind him. That is a specific and valuable roster function, and Haye is already demonstrating he can fill it. Malik Benson is the offensive name that caught me most off guard with the strength and consistency of the feedback, and I want to be honest about that surprise because I try not to let camp reports carry more weight than they deserve. 6th round pick out of Oregon, pick 195 overall, low investment, low expectations, the kind of selection that most people don't spend much time thinking about after draft weekend. Then minicamp happened. What I'm being told is that Mendoza's attention during walkthroughs was going to Benson specifically. That Benson was one of the first players out there and caught the quarterback's eye immediately. He's playing bigger than his listed size, showing up closer to 6'1" than 6 feet. His hands are already flashing as natural and reliable in ways that suggest the skill is real rather than a product of the controlled minicamp environment. His speed is the kind where people watching kept expecting somebody to close the gap on him, and it just wasn't happening. When you pair that specific kind of straight-line speed with a quarterback who has the accuracy to drop the ball into tight spaces with precision, the yards after catch opportunities become genuinely significant. I've been burned before by minicamp hype around receivers who didn't translate. I'm trying to stay measured, but my most trusted sources were consistent and specific in their reporting, and consistency across independent sources is the closest thing to reliable signal that minicamp evaluations can generate. Malik Benson was the loudest name on the offensive side of this camp and in a receiver room that was generating real concern from this fan base heading into the offseason. That is meaningful. Now, Fernando Mendoza. I've talked about specific elements of what he showed throughout everything above, but I want to step back and look at the full picture together because the whole is more significant than any individual part. The arm talent is real. One of my sources described it as a pitcher at the top of his delivery, the ball just coming out with natural carry and velocity that you can't manufacture through mechanics alone. The accuracy matches the arm talent. Those things are documented and expected from the first overall pick. What was not required by draft position or public expectation, what revealed something about who this person actually is, was the hotel room work. The extra center quarterback exchange reps nobody scheduled. The decision to skip a White House visit because he felt his priority needed to be at the facility, getting better, earning his standing in this new professional environment. His own public characterization of himself as being at the bottom of the totem pole, despite being the first overall pick in the draft. The humility in that framing is not performative. It's reflected in his actual behavior, in where he is after practice, in what he's working on, in how he treats the people around him. When the player with the most reason to coast is working the hardest, it creates a competitive environment that elevates everyone else. Trey Zoom sees it. The other rookies see it. The coaching staff sees it. The one note I've heard is that he could be more vocally assertive as a leader right now, which is completely understandable for a rookie still absorbing a new system and learning professional mechanics for the first time. The vocal leadership will develop as the command of the system deepens. The foundation underneath it is already exactly what you want. Now let me take you to the defensive side because the stories there are just as compelling, and some of them are going to reshape how you think about this roster's long-term ceiling. Locky Tossi is on this list for a reason that's really about organizational correction rather than individual revelation. Last season, the previous coaching staff made the decision to try to convert a 375-pound defensive tackle into an offensive lineman. The desperation driving that decision was understandable. They needed bodies. But the logic never actually held up when you examined it carefully. The learning curve to play offensive line at the NFL level, with all the scheme recognition and communication and footwork requirements, is significantly steeper than the learning curve to play nose tackle at that size. At nose tackle, the fundamental assignment is cleaner. Take on blocks, hold your ground, occupy space, create problems for everyone in your vicinity. For a player still building his professional football IQ, that is a far more realistic development pathway. The Raiders are using Tossi correctly now. That alone makes him a winner coming out of minicamp, because organizational intelligence in player deployment creates value even when the player himself hasn't changed. Devin Perkins is another camp invite who earned a contract, and the pattern of multiple tryout players leaving with deals tells you something specific about how this coaching staff operates. They came in knowing what they needed at the bottom of the roster and didn't hesitate to act when players proved they belonged. Perkins was described by a source I trust as noticeably athletic. Not marginally better than expected, but noticeably in a way that made people stop and look twice. When I heard that, I pulled his testing numbers. His relative athletic score landed at 83.6, which places him in the 83rd percentile among all strong safeties who have ever tested. That is not a marginal athlete who slipped through the evaluation process. That is an exceptional mover who somehow fell through the scouting cracks, and the Raiders identified him and got him in the building before anyone else moved on him. Add the special teams value he demonstrated at Utah State, and the full picture of why this coaching staff handed him a contract before he left the building becomes completely clear. Jaman McCoy's situation requires some nuance, because his minicamp participation was intentionally limited. The coaching staff is being appropriately careful with him given his ACL history and the ongoing question about whether additional surgery may be required. But cautious is not the same as concerned, and that distinction matters enormously. From what I'm hearing, there are no red flags about the knee itself. The question is about timeline, not about whether McCoy is going to be a functional football player when he's fully available. In the meantime, he's been doing agility work on the sideline, getting controlled reps, staying visibly engaged with coaches and teammates. And then there's this detail that I think is the most significant thing I've heard about McCoy from this minicamp period. One of the people I talked to told me that McCoy was the #1 cornerback on the Raiders' entire draft board, not just in the later rounds. The entire board. If you watched his 2024 tape before the injury, you understand why that claim doesn't feel like an exaggeration. Fluid hips, elite athleticism and man coverage, the kind of shutdown ability that only a small number of corners in any draft class genuinely possess. If the knee holds up and he returns to full health, the Raiders potentially found a franchise cornerback in the 4th round. That ceiling makes him a winner even at limited participation. Keon Sloan arrived at exactly the right moment. Keon Crawford sat out day 2 of minicamp due to workload management. Charles Snowden was released before camp opened. Tyreek Wilson was traded. The edge rusher depth chart has real openings right now, and Sloan, an undrafted free agent out of NC State, walked into that environment and immediately made noise. Coaches were talking about his motor, his work ethic, and one detail that stood out specifically in the reporting: his ability to ask the right questions. That might sound like a minor thing, but in a complex defensive scheme, a player who accurately understands what he doesn't know and actively seeks out the right information is already ahead of players who fake comprehension and fall behind quietly. Sloan is showing genuine versatility within the 3-4 alignment and brings special teams ability that could be the deciding factor in his roster competition. This is the kind of UDFA story that makes the post-draft period worth watching closely. Trey Stokes is the #1 defensive winner from this minicamp, and the more I learn about what this coaching staff envisions for him, the more excited I am about what he represents for this defense's long-term identity. They are not thinking about Stokes simply as a defensive back who covers receivers. They are thinking about him as the quarterback of the defense, the center fielder, the pre-snap communicator, the player whose job is to see the entire picture before the ball is snapped and get every other defender aligned correctly before the coverage breaks down. That is an enormous assignment for a rookie. The fact that the coaching staff is already having that conversation internally and treating it as realistic rather than aspirational tells you the level of football intelligence they believe Stokes possesses. The athletic profile supports that confidence completely. Stokes was a walk-on at Arizona, a label that carries certain assumptions about physical limitations. Those assumptions are wrong. His testing placed him in the 99th percentile for speed and registered as the 15th most athletically gifted safety prospect in the history of the NFL evaluation process. He is a physical freak operating under a label that significantly undersells him. Add to that profile the fact that he spends his free time at home watching film by choice rather than obligation, and you have the foundation of someone genuinely special. His partnership with Dalton Johnson, who brings the vocal energy and intensity that rubs off on every player around him, creates a secondary duo whose complementary personalities make both of them better. Johnson's intensity pulls Stokes toward the vocal leadership role the coaches want him to fill. Stokes' measured intelligence gives Johnson an anchor. Together, they are going to be a problem for opposing offenses in this secondary for years to come. 3 days of shorts and t-shirts and no pads. And yet, what came out of those 3 days tells a genuinely encouraging story about where this organization is building toward. The character is right across the roster. The work ethic is being established from the top down by a first overall pick who is taking center exchange reps in a hotel room after practice ends. The developmental pieces are developing in ways that create real optimism about the long-term depth, and the foundation of something worth building on is more visible now than it's been in Las Vegas in a very long time.